What's going on, college football fans? It's that time again. It's time for the First and Long College Football Show. We have got a great show for you tonight. We've got action-packed show for you tonight. We are going to get into the new era of Bama ball. It's Kalen DeBoer's Alabama Crimson Tide, and we're going to give our thoughts on the program as he steps in as the head honcho. And the ripple effects that come from that. We're going to talk about Caleb Downs, probably one of the most highly sought after transfers ever in the portal era. We're going to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs, the SEC runners up from this past season. We're going to talk about how they're trending in the 2024 season, transfer portal news, and then we're going to react to ESPN's way too early top 25. Mason, how you been doing, man? It's been a busy week. It's weird only getting together once a week now, isn't it?
It is, and it feels like it's been a lot longer than a week since we talked. So much has happened with Nick Saban leaving Alabama. That happened, less than 2 hours before we went live last week on Wednesday. So a little bit more than a full week since then, and it feels like it's been easily 2 weeks, a month. There's been such a ripple effect from Saban retiring that I think is really impacted college football in a different way. It'll be different. I don't know if it's better or worse necessarily. I like to think that Nick Saban being involved as a head coach keeps the sport better, as a whole. But it's gonna look different from now on. And I'm kind of over the whole I feel like a lot of Alabama fans are sulking and mourning the loss of their head coach, and I certainly understand, that you're going to miss a guy who was the GOAT, right? But let's not pretend that we all need to be dressed in black, which ironically I'm wearing black today, but and let's not pretend that the guy's dead, right? He got a new freaking office, and that's pretty much it. He's going to be the CEO now and the president. So not a whole lot is going to change as far as his involvement with Alabama, or I guess his patriotism for Alabama, right? He's still definitely repping those Crimson Tide colors.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a newsy couple of weeks after that national championship game where Michigan was able to win that national championship. So we got a lot to get into here. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you don't mind, it takes 2 seconds, less than that. Just hit that thumbs up button, and it helps us out a ton. What we're doing here today is we're going to record these topics and we go break them up later. But you guys that tune into the live show, we like to talk with you guys in the comment section. So if you got something you want to talk about or got something you want to add to the show, please drop us a comment and like the video. That helps out a ton. Let's jump into this first topic that we introduced at the top of the show here. Kalen DeBoer steps in as the new head coach for Alabama, and with a new head honcho comes a lot of changes, and it's a clean slate at Alabama. It's going to be all new folks. You said Saban's still going to be hanging around. He's going to be in the building, and I think that that's a big deal because I think that he definitely has an impression on the team. But at the same time, it seems like Kalen DeBoer is pretty headstrong and pretty happy to do things his way. What do you think is the trajectory for this team as of right now? And what is the new Alabama going to look like in 2024? It's too early to tell. We have not seen spring camp. We hadn't seen fall camp, but just kind of projecting what we're seeing right now, it's looking like it could be a tough year for Alabama.
It could be a really tough year. Look, I love Kalen DeBoer as a head coach. I really do. This really gives me Brian Harsin vibes at
Uh-oh.
Auburn. This is a guy who's coming in from outside the Southeast and is going to try to make it work at Alabama. I think that as an on-field coach, he's excellent, right? But when you put him into an environment like Alabama in the Southeastern Conference, he's got to hold up in recruiting, and I just don't think that he's going to be able to do it. I don't think that, and I told you, before they made this hire when we talked on Wednesday, we mentioned Kalen DeBoer is a prime candidate, right? And I at the time I had it listed as, hey, you go try to get Sark. If you can't get Sark, you go knock on Dan Lanning's door, try to get Lanning. If you can't get Lanning, go to Kalen DeBoer. I had him listed ahead of Mike Norvell at the time. In hindsight, I feel like Norvell, there's a trade-off to every pick, right? You're not going to get it right. Norvell would have been a better recruiter. He's already got the relationships with the guys in the
Right.
Southeast. And DeBoer's a better on-field coach, and I think that's pretty obvious, pretty clear to see. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like this was going to be a great move, a great decision for any coach, right? Because you're stepping into the shadows of Nick Saban, and at the end of the day, I feel like this was going to be a 2 to 3 year stop for any head coach. I don't feel good about Kalen DeBoer in this situation, in this spot. I'm just gonna kind of put that out there, put it on the record. He's got so much catching up to do in recruiting, and he's got to do it. You can't not recruit at Alabama. One thing that could really help him out is if Alabama changes their whole approach to NIL and they're able to rally the boosters, rally the collective, and start paying out. Start paying
Yeah.
money. Some of these guys who they don't have as strong of relationships with. There used to be a Saban discount. Georgia's getting it with Kirby Smart right now.
That's right.
With a Kirby Smart discount, right? You don't have to pay as much for players if you're going to go to be developed by one of the best in the game. You're going to have to pay more now if you're Kalen DeBoer, unfortunately, until he can prove that he did it. And look, this is what say what you will, right? This is what Saban did when he first got to Alabama. He paid players to get the best guys that he could on his roster and prove that he could coach them. And then, after a while, after you've got your guys and you're producing first round draft picks, you don't have to do that anymore. Well, Kirby Smart probably did the same thing at Georgia, right? So this is just kind of what you have to do. Now you can do it legally. Now you can do it, within regulations. But I'd like to see Alabama really pay up. It's time for that program to pay up, pay their players more. I think that they've got the fan base to do it, and if they do so, along with making the right defensive hire coaches or defensive coaching hires, I think that that's the recipe for success for Kalen DeBoer. But what are your thoughts? You've been high on Kalen DeBoer since he started at Washington, pretty much. What are your thoughts on him in this new position?
Well, I think that you're only as good as the coaches that surround you, and he's going to have to. I totally agree with you. He's going to have one hell of a supporting cast around him to be able to get this job done. So I guess that kind of leads us to our thoughts on Kane Womack, who's going to be defensive coordinator coming over from South Alabama, and we're in a world where a guy can go from being a head coach back to being a defensive coordinator, and it's not considered a lateral move because of the obvious large budget for coaching hires and things like that Alabama's got. So Kane Womack was a decent coach at South Alabama, but this is a big step up in competition, and this is going to be a really tough defense to get to the level that Alabama fans are used to, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. I think everybody's got to just bring their expectations down a notch a little, because I mean, look at the talent that's leaving Alabama. And you're right. It's about the relationships, recruiting and talent acquisition and retention is about the relationships that you've built over time. And you're bringing a guy over here. I heard on the Cover 3 podcast, and it was pretty funny, but it's like if Kalen DeBoer walks through the Atlanta airport, nobody's even going to know who he is.
Right.
And he can be wearing his Washington hat, and he can be wearing his Washington gear, and somebody would be like, "Oh, wow, that's weird. You don't see a lot of Washington fans around here." I mean, this guy is not from here, and I just thought that it was culturally kind of a weird fit there. But look, he's a great coach. I don't have any doubt that in a couple of years he's going to be able to figure things out. He's bringing a quarterback over in Austin Mack, I believe, and that was the quarterback of the future for Washington. And if Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb like him and he's the future of the program for Washington, then he's going to be the future of the program over in Alabama. One thing that I don't know that people are talking a ton about, and I don't have the answer for it. Maybe you do, Mason. But what's Julian saying, thinking about all this? The quarterback.
What's he saying?
I have no idea. What's he saying, man?
Yeah.
What? What? I mean, who's the quarterback of the future for Alabama? We don't really know. Ryan Grubb's coming to Alabama, right? Because I feel like it's been like, has that been officially announced by Alabama?
It is. It was weird. It was like not as big of a story as it should have been.
Nobody's talking about it. You can't even find quotes and stuff about it. I looked.
It's odd. They're bringing over him, their offensive line coach. I believe the receivers coach, if I'm not mistaken. But
I know Alabama fans are like, please give us that center. And I think that center is coming over from Washington. I was talking to my dad earlier. We had basketball practice and had to coach the boy. That's why I call him the boy. I had to coach him and his team. And Dad said that center is only 270 pounds. And I don't know if that's true, but look, SEC fans, and then my dad's a perfect example of an SEC fan that's like, you ain't coming down here about to do nothing. Like
he's only 270.
Yeah, that's what talking goes on down here in the South. That boy is only 270. You know, they're gonna blow him off the line. And look, Alabama fans, I joke around about center because everybody knows there was tons of snapping issues and things like that. So, look, this is going to be a completely revamped Bama team next year. We're going to figure out who's staying and who's going. Julian Saban is somebody that we need to keep our eye on and figure out. I don't know if he signed early. Did he signed early, right?
Yeah, he did. He signed his LOI.
So now Alabama and Washington are the only two teams, if I'm not mistaken, who still have a little bit of a window to transfer. So those two are not.
Well,
and we're going to go through
Arizona,
transfer portal.
Technically.
Okay, Arizona too. Yeah, because Jed Fish left. Old Jed. And we'll talk about Jed here in just a minute too, because that's something that's pretty interesting to me. But
very noteworthy.
Yeah. So with Ryan Grubb coming over, what do you think this offense is going to look like? I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to tell right now, right?
Yeah. It is, but they're bringing kind of like Sanders, Deion Sanders, and they're bringing their own luggage in a lot of ways, and they're going to try to get everybody that they can from Washington to come play with them.
We're going to get rid of all these not get rid of, that's the wrong terminology. We're going to let all this awesome talent go, and then we're going to bring in our non-Louis luggage, right?
Well, you got to fill the holes somehow, right? So they've definitely got holes. If Alabama's got anything right now, it's holes in their roster. 26 holes,
and it's not Kalen DeBoer's fault. It's not his fault. I mean, sounds like we're dogging on Kalen DeBoer, dude. Like we like Kalen DeBoer.
We do, yeah, absolutely. I am fearful that this move is going to hurt him in the long run. I think that had he stayed at Washington, he probably would have been better off in the long run. But we'll see, right? If he wins at Alabama, hey, he's going to be one of the greatest coaches in college football, and I think that's just a tough job to fill. Alabama's a tough place to coach at.
Dan Lanning was the only guy, I think, that could have just stepped in, and he
He
wouldn't have
knew
retained all talent,
he would
but
have
he
got a
would have
lot of them.
done he would have got a lot of them, dude.
Yeah,
Um,
and
but
I think
I
he knew. I think he knew. He was like, man, I don't want Saban sitting upstairs breathing down my neck. Um,
he's got a good
it,
thing going out there in Oregon, so
that
um,
yeah, they got a better NIL package. And
big boy conference, $100 million a
but
year coming down the pipe.
oh yeah, oh yeah, and I agree though. I think that Lanning would have been the best fit for everything you want, right? A passionate coach, great recruiter, sustains relationships in the Southeast. Runs an Alabama type system. And is off technically that Saban tree. Um,
Hmm.
in an indirect sense, but ultimately, Kalen DeBoer's going to be the guy. Again, I'm kind of fearful of what this looks like for him in the coming years. I think that this was a trap hire, and this could end up being a 2-year stop, a 3-year stop for Kalen DeBoer. Unfortunately, a coach that I really like.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he'll be financially set uh, for the rest of his life, so he
Yeah.
he ain't got to worry about that part anymore. Now he's just got to win some football games, and I think the goal for Alabama next year, and we're going to get into breaking down their schedules for next year later in the off season here, as soon as some of this stuff calms down, maybe next week. But I think 9 wins, needs to be the goal next year, and I think that would be I think that'd be pretty good. I think that'd be pretty impressive considering
Mhm.
the turnover that's gone on there. What 26 players are transferring out, so pretty tough odds and situation there. Um, and that kind of leads us over into our next topic about one of the I have to say, in my opinion, I think the most talented defensive player to ever enter the transfer portal, or maybe even offensive, if you want to. I mean, Caleb Downs was responsible as a secondary player last year for over 100 tackles at his
Tackles.
position, a couple interceptions. Um, from what we've researched and what we've heard today, we'll break it to you here first. Caleb Downs is heading to UGA, and from what we've heard, there's been several students on campus that have already uh, witnessed Caleb Downs moving all his stuff into his dorm and or apartment or whatever have you. I'm sure he doesn't have a dorm. I mean, he's getting paid, son. Give me a break. But with that being said, this is just an unbelievable secondary that Georgia is going to have next year with Caleb Downs going to the Georgia Bulldogs. What is your initial thoughts on Caleb Downs and how is this going to affect the Georgia Bulldogs?
I think when you look at it, he is the most impressive recruit or transfer portal player that we've ever seen, right? Come through the transfer portal that's proven, right? You could say Joe Burrow, right, was one of the best gets, but I mean, we saw what he did in 2018. He wasn't all that impressive. It was 2019 where he lit it up.
Mhm.
You could look at Jaden Daniels and say the same thing, but again, you could say the same thing. He didn't have a great first year, and then the second year he lit it up.
Yeah.
Caleb Downs had an outstanding freshman year, freshman All American. Really could have been an All American just outright. I think he to me had as much of an impact for Alabama as a true freshman as Brock Bowers did for Georgia as a true freshman, and he is going to end up being a future Hall of Famer more than likely. Barring injury and things like that. I think he is a plug and play. Type of player, and he's going to be entering a system that he's used to and is familiar with, playing with players and coaches that he already knows, and his position coach, T. Rob Travarius Robinson, initially from Alabama, was the safeties coach at Alabama. He's now headed to Georgia to fill his ex head coach's role. Will Muschamp, he was the safeties coach, or the DB's coach, I believe, at South Carolina when Will
Okay.
Muschamp was the head coach there. So it's kind of fitting that he's going to kind of supersede him now and take his spot. And I have to think that Will Muschamp had a lot to do with that and saying, "Hey, look, I'm backing out from the coaching stuff. I'm a little bit burnt out. I got a kid here and a kid in at Vanderbilt. You know, I kind of want to be a part of both of them. So I'm kind of backing out. He's going to take an analyst role, and now Tavarius Robinson steps in and is going to be the safeties coach and co-defensive coordinator. So it gets him some of that experience as a defensive coordinator under Glenn Schumann, you know, who's you know, primed to take another head coaching job in the near future. So I think it's a good position for him. Obviously, if you haven't heard, you know, Alabama tried to keep him, and I think that this was the most important move that has been made this offseason. I don't think that it gets enough talk because what Kirby did here is he said, all right, I've got an opportunity to get an excellent recruiter. This was Alabama's best recruiter outside of Nick Saban. Okay. Excellent recruiter, excellent relationship guy with the DBs and the safeties. You know, great on the field coach, good attitude. He gets the you know, green check from Will Muschamp. But most importantly, all those things are great. You know, all those things are great for Georgia's football program. But what Kirby was able to do to his rivals from across the state line in Alabama, I think that was more impactful than what it actually does to boost Georgia's roster. And what I mean by that is, you know, they go out and get Travarius Robinson, who interviews for the defensive coordinator position right after Saban leaves, and turns it down because I feel like he read the writing on the wall there and said, you know what, I'm not sure about this defensive situation here. I'm not sure we're going to get the guys that I want. And I'm going to go get developed as a defensive coordinator. I don't want to be put into a situation where I'm the scapegoat, you know, it ruined my reputation. So, but at the end of the day, T-Rob had an opportunity for Alabama to be the glue that holds that defense together, right? And continues that relationship with Caleb Downs, keeps Caleb Downs there, which is monumental in its own right, but keeps a lot of that defensive group together, which was so good last year for Alabama, and continues to recruit that defensive side of the football, right? They're losing 5 stars off the defensive side and the offensive side right now with the news of Saban leaving. T-Rob, I'd like to think, being the recruiter that he is, would at least be able to hold on to a lot of those recruits and keep the program from crumbling like we're really seeing right now. But so that's a little bit of a spin on T-Rob. He's a big reason why Caleb Downs is coming to Georgia, but also a lot of that legwork was done several years ago with Georgia and Kirby Smart when they've been recruiting this kid.
And that's the part that Kalen DeBoer is missing.
Right.
That's the missing piece to the puzzle for Kalen DeBoer that we talked about just a few minutes ago. And if you're watching this clip, you can go check that clip out on our page where we talked about Kalen DeBoer in the new era of Alabama football. But that's what Kalen is missing, man. These relationships are built over years' time, and you know, a good analogy I always think of is kind of like commercial real estate. Nobody just jumps into commercial real estate and just starts selling big, you know, commercial properties, right? That takes years of building relationships and people knowing what you bring to the table, and that's what Kalen DeBoer is going through right now. He's going to have to lay that groundwork and prove himself on a new proving ground in the toughest conference in America. But Robinson going to Georgia obviously had a tremendous impact on Caleb Downs going to Georgia. And who knows what other talent that's going to bring with it. But this Georgia secondary, it is going to be absolutely nasty in 2024. Are the Georgia Bulldogs already beaten Bama in the 24 season? I know you kind of touched on this a second ago.
Got a little ahead of myself there.
Well, it does seem though as like Georgia is winning the offseason right now, right?
Right. There, you know, Georgia is in the middle of all of the talk in the offseason. All the talk right now is around Caleb Downs, is around the Nick Saban retirement, right? And Kalen DeBoer. I mean, it's Alabama and Georgia right now, right? But you have to feel like with Saban stepping down, insert DeBoer, and Georgia getting T-Rob, getting Caleb Downs, Also getting Jake Pope. I think that people kind of, forget about that name. Was
That's somebody
another
we talked about on the show last week.
right. Another safety that comes over from Alabama, who was a top 150 player in his own right, but yeah, I think that Georgia is definitely ahead of Alabama right now in the 2024 season. We don't actually get to see them face off until late September, but right now, I mean, Kirby's kind of showing Kalen DeBoer like, hey, this, the season already started. The season started the day after the Rose Bowl for Alabama, and Kalen DeBoer is a little bit late to the show. But I do want to say one thing about sort of the whole transfer portal schedule and everything. I feel like for Alabama fans, they have to be looking at this right now and saying, we need something's got to change here because
Bad
we don't even
situation.
have a chance to get the guys we need.
That's what I was
All
just
of our
about to
guys
say.
can leave, but we can't get anybody back. So how is that fair? I feel like for Alabama fans, for Washington fans, for obviously for members of those teams, it's really tough. It puts you in a tough situation where your hands are tied, and I think that this will lead to some change coming down the road in college football. Mainly because it's Alabama that's suffering. If this was, Georgia Tech that's suffering from it, or name, any other, lower tier, well, really any school in the Big 12, like any lower tier Power 5
Yeah,
school, and
Arizona.
nobody's talking about, the fact that they're struggling, but Alabama is a blue blood, and that name's going to get some recognition. So I think that we'll see some changing in college football in the future from this.
DeBoer has to go hit up Arizona. He's got to go hit up his old school Washington, and he's got to get these guys. I mean, that's all there is to it. They're and we're about to get into the transfer portal news. Let's just go ahead and jump into that, because right now Washington, Arizona, Alabama, I guess South Alabama, teams that have recently lost a head coach, they still have a chance to bring players in, and players still have a chance to leave. So we don't fully have a picture drawn in our head for what Alabama is going to look like once, Kalen DeBoer is done attacking this transfer portal stuff. But I'm just going to kind of go down the list here, and these are guys that have just recently went in, and as soon as today, Jameer Grimsley is a wide receiver, a 4-star wide receiver who has decided to leave Alabama and pursue a career somewhere else. On the 17th, which was yesterday, Caden Proctor decided he's going to Iowa. Caleb Downs, that's whenever 24/7 had 100% crystal ball to him to Georgia. You got Trey Amos, 3-star cornerback, headed to Ole Miss. Amari Niblack headed to Texas. But you do have a couple of guys coming in. You've got Austin Mack, who's going to be the quarterback. We talked about him before. He was the quarterback of the future for Washington, and now he's going to be headed over to Alabama. So if you do have problems with Julian Sayin leaving, then you've got at least a quarterback that your coaching staff, had kind of put all the eggs in that basket anyway. But Sean Murphy gone. I mean, the 26 guys, Mason, gone from this Alabama team. They got to get on it, man, if they're wanting to get something done before the deadline here.
Well, you got to think that they'd like to get these guys before spring practice, and again, it kind of screws Alabama up the way that the transfer windows fall, where they lose their coach late, and all of a sudden they can't get anybody. Their players can leave, but nobody can come in. And it's really not right. And I like to think too that Saban, he could have announced this before the playoffs started, right? I mean, I know he didn't want any distractions for his team, but for the players, you got to think like, hey, could have given us a heads up here at least.
That would have fired everybody up, dude. I don't know why he didn't do that. Like, he
Well,
just didn't want the attention, I guess. But since when does Nick Saban give a shit about having a bunch of attention? Like,
right.
dude, fire them boys up. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not no Alabama fan, okay? It didn't matter to me. I bet on Michigan to win the game and all that stuff. So it went how I wanted it to, I guess. But what are you doing? It definitely left Alabama with their pants down in the wind, dude.
Well, and supposedly, based on the interview he did with Reese Davis, he didn't know up until 30 minutes before he addressed the team. I don't know about all that.
That's weird.
I don't think that's a good way to make decisions, and doesn't
That's
sound
not
like
good
Nick
game prep,
Saban.
coach.
Yeah. So
come on, coach. You got to have a game plan at least a week out on that, bro.
I mean, I'm sure it's a tough.
You got to tell the cleaning ladies to get down to the lake house, get that sucker cleaned out. Like, I mean, come on, dude. Get the pontoon boat.
Yeah.
Get it out of the rafters. All that.
So my point though is why did he wait so long? Right? Why would he wait until the transfer window closes?
Right.
Well, it's tough to leave now. It's tough for his players, or for Alabama's players, to leave now. And there's a school aspect to this too, where the add drop window is gone. That was last week, right? So for students, to add and drop classes, that supposedly that's done. So if you're going to transfer, you got to do it like this week, and the school has to sign off on it to say, like, we're going to make an administrative decision and allow this player to come in and kind of come in late past the window, right? So there's a lot more hoops to jump through. Makes it a lot tougher, and for a guy like Caleb Downs, there's a lot of question marks as to whether or not he can even come to Georgia. And I guess the rumors are he's already moving in, so I guess they've cleared that hurdle. But there were a lot of question marks as to whether or not he could come in and be a part of the student, the student base, and be a part of to be a student at Georgia, where a lot of these kids have already gotten their books. They've already plan on starting class, and at Alabama they've already got their crayons and coloring books too, and so it's they've already started too, so it's it ends up being a sticky situation. But I joke, but I think that Saban knew what he was doing at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're gonna see a lot of Washington guys headed to Alabama over the next few days. You got a couple of Washington transfers that just hit. Vincent Holmes, who's a 4-star safety. Julius Buelo, he's an interior offensive lineman. He's going to be heading out of Washington. I think you're going to see a lot of Arizona guys headed over to Washington. I think you're going to see a lot of Washington guys headed to Alabama. These guys are following their coaches, and definitely an easier transition for those Arizona guys headed to Washington. And that's going to obviously put the brakes on what I thought a team that I thought had a lot of momentum headed into next year, which was Arizona. Somebody that we haven't talked a ton about so far is Jed Fish. And listen, Jed Fish, you want to talk about turning a team around. Coach Prime could take a page out of his book. Because I'm telling you, he did it the right way, and he got talent in there. And unfortunately for the Arizona Wildcat fans, I know we do have a few that watch this channel. It's tough cookies. That this ain't. I think we're seeing a time in where the Big 12 is and the ACC is becoming a breeding ground for the SEC and Big 10, plucking talent and talented coaches from those ranks, and it's really not even a fight. Mm-hmm. Like if the Big 10 or the SEC come calling these coaches that are in the Big 12, you have no choice but to answer and talk to them, dude. The money is in those conferences, and we're starting to see a divide, and I think it's happening really, really rapidly. But Jed Fish jumped all over the chance to go to Washington. He's going to do a good job there. But both of these squads are going to go through what I think is going to be a bit of a rebuilding process over the next year or two. We talked about Caleb Downs. He's headed to Georgia. That just tons of Arizona guys. You got Price Hawk. He's a cornerback, 4-star cornerback that was at Arizona. Doesn't know where he's going yet. Burnett. He's a 4-star tight end headed out of Arizona. Don't know where he's going yet. As far as the transfer rankings, we've got to change at number 1. We got Texas A&M at the number 1 spot now. Ole Miss at number 2. Florida State 3, 4 Louisville, 5 Colorado, 6 Oregon, 7 South Carolina, 8 Texas, 9 Missouri, and 10 NC State. Texas, dude, keeps swiping up these damn wide receivers. Mason, golly, dude, have you taken a look at what Texas has done? They've kind of, I don't know that they've come out of nowhere as far as the transfer portal, because they did really good last year. But I mean, man, this team is unbelievable on the edges, bro. I mean, it is absolutely insane. And as I go to pull up Texas, isn't it weird to go to the SEC section to find the Texas Longhorns on the 24/7 website?
That's right.
They're in
No
they're in
doubt.
the SEC now, bro. How wild is that? But you got Isaiah Bond headed over from Alabama going to Texas. You got Amari Niblack. He's a tight end going from Alabama, headed over to Texas. And Amari Niblack, I like. That's a good piece. Kendrick Blackshire, he's a 3-star linebacker, but that's a transfer portal ranking. He was a 4-star high school guy. So Texas is one of the teams, including with Georgia, that is raiding this Alabama roster. What do you think about the Longhorns? Are they ready for the SEC?
Yeah, and you mentioned the wide receivers. Also picking up Silas Bolden from Oregon State. He's a guy who started as a 3-star. Transfer portal ranking has him as a 4-star. So it's a guy who's trending up. That's usually a good sign. A good sign in the transfer portal. Rankings that they're also getting Isaiah Nayor. Nayor is leaving. My mistake. They're also getting
Because he ain't gonna play.
Matthew Golden was the other one from Houston. He's another 4-star receiver that they were able to get. And look, Texas is. I'm going to steer away from saying Texas is back. I think that they are definitely back, but Texas isn't going anywhere. They're going to keep dishing out this money until they win a freaking championship.
Well, what I think they did better this go round versus last year was they got more players on the defense. You bring in Andrew Makuba over that's plays safety. He was from Clemson. You got Trey Moore. Trey Moore is a badass dude from UT. People don't realize it because he played for UTSA last year. But I'm telling you, Trey Moore off the edge, man, that's going to be a big player in this defense next year. Everybody was after that guy, but he had to go get his oil money, bro. But right across the state there, you've got Texas A&M. And Texas A&M has, I feel like, pretty quietly, and I think everything else has been pretty quiet because of the fact that, Nick Saban, the greatest coach of all time, decided to retire and everything. But Texas A&M also somewhat feasting on the Alabama roster and a lot of these other rosters where coaches are changing here very, very late in the season. Des Ricks is a 4-star cornerback. He heads over from Alabama, headed to Texas A&M. Trey Watson headed over from Washington. He's a tight end, a decent little piece there. And you got Scooby Williams. That was a guy that I meant to talk about last week, and I can't remember if we did or not, but this is a 4-star, and that's a transfer rating. That's not just a high school rating. That's a college 4-star rating. Scooby Williams is he's a linebacker from the Florida Gators. He'll be headed over to Texas A&M. Texas A&M's doing pretty well, man, and have crawled their way to the number 1 spot in the transfer portal rankings. As I said, we're going to break down probably maybe even next week. We'll go through the SEC schedule and just kind of get a way too early look at some of these top tier teams in the SEC, or what we think are top tier. But with the influx of talent and the outflux of talent, has it been a net positive or has it been a net negative for the A&M Aggies, do you think?
I think it's a net negative, but considering that there was a coaching change, it can be spun into something that's positive.
Yeah.
I think Elko has shown that he can do more with less, and so
Well, and what has Texas A&M done anyway?
right,
With all the talent, right? So
yeah.
it's like, I bet you he can do more with that amount of talent than Jimbo could do with all the talent in the world.
Well, and you've got to think that that's going to open up that NIL fund to where they can go out and make a real damage in recruiting this year. They should be able to do some damage in recruiting. If they don't, something's up. I gotta you gotta question what exactly is going on at Texas A&M if they're not able to recruit with that type of money and that type of cap fund being opened up essentially. But another big winner right now is Louisville. They've been able to do a lot in the transfer portal, specifically with that Alabama roster as well. And Florida State, man, they've got 5 guys coming over from Alabama, really just doing a great job with the transfer portal as well. I think that they're ones to watch and a team that's getting better in the transfer portal.
Mike Norvell's done a good job in the portal for sure. Let's jump into our last topic of the night, and we appreciate everybody watching and everything, and we hope that you'll drop a thumbs up if you enjoyed the show. Let's react to ESPN's way too damn early top 25, but I do agree with some of this, and some of this, it's ESPN. You're not going to agree with all of it, my God. But number one, the Georgia Bulldogs, surprise, surprise. I don't think this is any surprise whatsoever. Yeah, you lose Brock Bowers, Amarius Mims, Lad McConkey. Those are big pieces on that offense there, but you bring in Trevor Etienne, London Humphreys, Xavier McLeod, KJ Bolden, Ellis Robinson, Justin Williams. I mean, you can go on and on with the additions and now Caleb Downs you can add to that list as well. I think Georgia's the number one team preseason, and rightfully so, don't you?
I do, and I think there's going to be so much talk about this secondary adding Downs to the fold, where you've got Malachi Starks and Caleb Downs playing, which is the greatest safety duo that we've seen since 2001 Miami with Ed Reed, and you can't even say that because I'm blanking on the other player's name right now. Gosh, I had it before the show and now I'm blanking on it. Anyways, that guy was a freshman playing the nickel position. So he wasn't even who he was as an NFL player or as a college player yet. You're getting Malachi Starks and Caleb Downs at their peak, as a sophomore and a junior. I think that this is the greatest on the field safety duo that we've ever seen. So that's the number one. If you're keeping track, that's the number one safety for the 2022 class in Malachi Starks, who was listed as an athlete, the number one out of the 2023 class in Caleb Downs. Oh, and they've also got KJ Bolden, who was the number one safety in 2024. He is going to benefit the most from Caleb Downs coming, and it may not look like it at this time for him, but he's only 185 pounds. He's got to put some weight on, and I think that that's going to help him out where he'll have more time to lift and tear those muscles up and get stronger and put that weight on than he would if he's expected to start this year. So you've got those two at safety also, and I know I'm going a little bit long on this, but Janelle Aguero, he's going to be playing the star, another former 5-star guy. He didn't end as a 5-star, but at one point he was a 5-star out of IMG Academy. Ellis Robinson is coming in, and they're saying this guy is as ready as Caleb Downs was to play safety at Alabama last year, but he's going to be at cornerback. So he steps in and replaces Kamari Lassiter. And then on the other side, you've got a little bit of a battle between Everett and Humphrey. I think Humphrey ends up winning that one. Those 5 right there, I think when it's all said and done, you're going to look at it as the best defensive backfield in college football history.
Well, and everything you just said, that's all on the defensive side. We didn't even say anything about Carson Beck coming back.
Well, there's just not enough time.
There's not. I mean, we'd have to be a Georgia pod, dude. We'd have to be a Georgia pod to do all that. Number 2, you got your Texas Longhorns. We touched on them just a few minutes ago. I think, overall, you lose Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Jonathan Brooks. These are obviously big pieces. Jatavian Sanders. Those are big offensive pieces, but they just reloaded on offense, man. I mean, they're not rebuilding, they're reloading, and I think that this is going to be a much more stout defense in 2024. What do you think about the Texas Longhorns? I mean, they got a really tough schedule, man. Oklahoma and Texas have really tough schedules coming into the SEC. The SEC schedule makers held nothing back.
That's right. They've done a lot in the transfer portal market and in recruiting as well. I think one of their biggest recruiting wins is going to end up being Ryan Wingo. He's a 5-star guy. They got him out of Missouri, beat Missouri out for him, and I think he's going to be a difference maker and step in for really Adonai Mitchell. I think at the end of the day, and kind of play that X receiver really well.
And I think Isaiah Bond is better than what people think he is too, because
Mm-hmm.
I think he was in a bad passing offense.
I think he was the best receiver on that team, and statistically, it didn't show up on the field.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a lot better in a system where somebody can actually get him the football, and I think that Quinn Ewers can do that most of the time. He can anyway. That's something we'll talk about more in the offseason. We won't rile all the Texas Longhorns up right this second. And God forbid, don't do the horns down. Number 3, Oregon Ducks. They're obviously on a great trajectory. It's going to depend on the quarterback situation this year, I think, right? You bring in Dylan Gabriel. How is he going to mesh? How is he going to work into the fold at Oregon? You also bring in Dante Moore, so you got an insurance plan there at quarterback. Dante Moore, of course, coming over from UCLA. But Bucky Irvin's gone. Troy Franklin's gone. And you lose pretty much or at least the majority of your secondary if you're Oregon. So had some big shoes to fill, but I feel like they've done a really good job in the transfer portal and recruiting. And Dan Lanning is a really good coach. I know he made some boneheaded decisions this past year, but who hasn't? Nick Saban did it earlier in his career. Kirby Smart did it early in his career. I think it's just par for the course. What do you think about the Oregon Ducks at number 3?
Yeah,
Justified,
I think,
right?
Yeah, I think that this is a really strong ranking so far. I think that three kind of fits where they're at. Excuse me. And who they're bringing in. I really like defensive tackle Aiden Breland out of California. He's 6'5", 310 pounds. Just a big guy. He's going to fill out and end up being a pretty stalwart defensive tackle, I think, for this Ducks defense. So he's one that I circle. And overall, I think Dan Lanning is really just doing a great job at building an SEC roster on the West Coast. And by the way, they also got the in my opinion, the number 1 wide receiver in the transfer portal class in Evan Stewart, and that's going to be a big addition for them. And he just seems like somebody that should be playing for Oregon anyways. He's got over 1 million followers on TikTok, and he's definitely a flashy receiver. I think he's going to be a great fit for Oregon.
TikTok receiver, bro. TikTok receiver.
He is.
Okay.
He is.
Real deal.
I don't know that they come any other way nowadays, actually.
They're all TikTok stars, dude. Every single fucking one of them. All right. Well, here we go. We're at the crossroads in which we're going to have a disagreement with this list. Number 4, we got the Alabama Crimson Tide. There is no chance in hell that Alabama finishes number 4 in the country this coming up season. And part of the reason is I think they made this way too early. This is kind of ironic, right? They made this way too early, top 25 way too early.
Yeah. This was 10 days ago.
Yeah. So lots has changed, dude. I mean, they put on here the expected key losses: Dallas Turner, J.C. Latham, Kool-Aid McKinstry. With all due respect, I mean, those players are really good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, especially Kool-Aid McKinstry and Dallas Turner. But now you've lost an offensive tackle. Now you've lost your best defensive player. There's absolutely no way that Alabama is finishing 4th in the country this upcoming season. If they did, Kalen DeBoer would be the next best thing. Since Nick Saban at Alabama, because I think that would just be an unbelievable coaching job. And I just don't see that happening in 2024. What do you think?
I agree. I think if Mark Schlabach had to do this over, he probably would not have Alabama in the top 5. He might even be willing to put them outside the top 10. Hard to believe, but I think that we have to be honest with ourselves and what they're losing off of this roster, having to learn a new offense and potentially a new defense. There's just so many moving parts to play in a tough conference, arguably the toughest conference in the Power 5 next year. I think that Alabama's just got their plate full and not enough belly to take care of it.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, Caden Proctor headed over to Iowa. We've beat this horse. We took this horse out in the field and beat it dead. If you want to watch our takes on all the Alabama stuff, you can go check out the full version of our show, the episode number 32 that we did here on January 18th. If you're watching the clip, you can go check that out under the live section. Let's speed it up just a little bit. Number 5, Ohio State Buckeyes. I don't know what to think about Ohio State at the moment. We're not going to have a chance to talk about their new athletic director hire that I'm not in love with at all. I'm interested at the trajectory of this football team as we move on here. This is going to be, I think, a bit of a do or die year for Ryan Day. There's a show idea for us for later in the offseason, coaches that are kind of up against the wall heading into 24, and we'll do that later in the season or off season, I should say. But Ohio State is obviously lost their quarterback. They had no offense in that bowl game whatsoever. I don't feel like they have any momentum going into the year. They do pick up Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss. I feel like that's obviously a big pickup. They picked up Will Howard at quarterback. Going to be very interesting to see how Will Howard fits into this offense and if we see Air Nolan at all and Jeremiah Smith. I just feel like a lot of things have to go right for Ohio State to finish 5th in the country this upcoming season, but it's possible. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm hearing that they're going to run the football a lot more and be more of a ground and pound team to play complementary football with that defense that they, that they're keeping. They're not really losing much on the defensive side of the football at all.
No, they're
which
not.
Which is very promising for them. But my question is around the quarterback. Can Will Howard? It has to be Will Howard. If it's Aaron Nolan, things went really bad, right? I think it has to be Will Howard, and can he play within this system? Learn it really quickly. I like Will Howard. I think he's an excellent quarterback. I think he's an excellent college quarterback. I don't know if he's an excellent, pro prospect or not. He's got the size, he's got the frame. He pretty average arm, I think. Can he put it all together in an Ohio State Ohio State offensive system with these weapons? Probably. I'm anxious to see it.
Yeah. I'm interested to see too. I just don't know what to think on that situation yet. I'm going to have to see them in the spring a little bit more. Number 6, the Michigan Wolverines. I don't know what to expect here either. J.J. McCarthy's gone. We know this defense is going to be really, really good again next year. This
not
is
losing a lot on defense.
Not losing hardly anything on defense at all. And not a lot of come-ins and go-ins on the defense, flat out. Now, what if Harbaugh takes an NFL job? Then that's all out the window, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he hasn't signed his extension yet, right? For Michigan?
Right.
So, and that's a whole nother thing that I really wanted to get into today, and we didn't have time to, guys. But, Jim Harbaugh is saying that if he stays at Michigan, he wants to not be liable for anything that happened. I don't understand how you
don't get
what
to
kind
make
of clause is this, man?
Clauses, yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Jim Harbaugh will be the talk of college football next week, so we'll save that for next week because he is what everybody's going to be talking about right now. It's Alabama and Kalen DeBoer, but next week it'll be it'll be Jim Harbaugh and Michigan. They'll get their seat at the table.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a good defense, like we said. I don't know about the offense. That's going to be a whole nother thing. You lose pretty much all your production at offense. Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, J.J. McCarthy. You lose a lot of that offensive line. Roman Wilson's gone. So definitely going to have to replace everything on that offense. Going to be interesting to see. Number 7, the Ole Miss Rebels. I felt like the Ole Miss Rebels had a lot more momentum a couple weeks ago, and it seems like things have cooled down a little bit. We obviously know that they're ranked really highly in the transfer portal rankings. You got Walter Nolan expected to come in, Princely U from Florida, Juice Wells. We know all those guys that are coming in. I'm interested to see how all this stuff meshes together, especially after you lose Quinshon Judkins, probably the best player on your offense.
Yeah, I don't really know what to expect from Ole Miss. By all accounts, they should be better than they were last year, given what they have coming in. But last year was a really good year. 10 wins is nothing to 11 with the bowl win. But that's nothing to turn your nose up to. It gets them in a college football playoff this coming year. So I think that should be what they circle and say, look, we need to replicate what we did last season. And we'll consider it a success. We'll be in the playoffs, and I think that they should be able to do that. A tough schedule next year, which we'll get into it in a later episode. But they do have Georgia on the schedule this year again.
Yep. Number 8, Missouri Tigers. I think I think they got a ton of momentum, and they're really not losing a ton. So is the quarterback back again, Mason?
He is. He's coming back, which
Dude,
is
I feel like he's been around
that's
forever.
that's a win in its own right. If you'll recall, last year in the first game, Missouri fans were booing this guy, and lo and behold, he's the second best quarterback in the SEC, and by their accounts,
He's the best thing that's came since Jesus. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, but they not a whole lot going on. They add a few guys. They add Williams Nwaneri, which was the number 3 overall player in the country. And he's a defensive. They've got him listed as a defensive end. I thought that he was more of an interior guy, but maybe he's decided to line up on the edge there for Mizzou. Also, linebacker Darius Smith. He's a guy who I was really high on from Georgia. 6'5", lanky, 235, super fast outside linebacker coming off the edge. But also running back Marcus Carroll. He's a guy that they got from Georgia State. He's a pretty good little running back that I think that they're hoping will fill Cody Schrader's shoes and do a pretty good job of that. And Caden Green is an offensive tackle that they were able to get. So they're loading up in key positions and filling the roster in places that they're losing. I think that they should be a little bit better this coming season in an SEC that's as a whole is getting better. So we'll see if that ends up washing by the end of it.
Yeah. Well, they definitely are legitimate CFP contenders. I feel like with Brady Cook and Luther Burden coming back, going to be interesting to see. Let's kind of just run through these last ones, and we'll just kind of get our reactions real quick as we're approaching an hour. Thank you all so much for watching the show. We do appreciate that. Number 9, the Arizona Wildcats, dude. There's this obviously was made back before we knew that Jed Fish was not going to be the main man at Arizona anymore. This is
are they even a top 25 team without him?
No, not anymore.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because they're now all their talent's gone.
Well, they're going to lose Fafita. They're going to lose McMillan.
They already lost their backup quarterback that was the quarterback of the future. They lost him as well. So, yeah, it's not looking good for Arizona. Back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity, right? Without getting a copyright warning. Number 10, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They've been really good recruiting and transfer portal the whole cycle. This coaching staff is going to revamp this wide receiver room and this offense. We'll see what they can come up with and what kind of scheme they can run. You got Riley Leonard coming in at quarterback. I think this is a pretty good spot for Notre Dame. I think they'll probably finish in the 10 to 15 range this year.
I like that spot for them. I like Leonard coming in. I like his old teammate from Duke, RJ Oben, coming in at defensive end. Also, Bo Collins was a big pickup from Clemson. So let's see what they're able to do. I'd like to see them take a step forward under a young coach and Marcus Freeman.
Let's finish out these last few here. We'll go 11 through 15 and give our thoughts. You got the Washington Huskies at 11. Obviously, that's bullcrap. Number 12, Penn State Nittany Lions at 12. Yep. Number 13, the Utah Utes. Number 14, LSU Tigers. And number 15, the Oklahoma Sooners. It seems like LSU has got some momentum. I think they're addressing the defense. So I like this spot. This is about what they finished up this year. So I think this is about where LSU is going to be until they can get the players that are going to get them over the hump. This seems like Brian Kelly's happy zone is about 10, 11 wins, 9, 10, 11 wins every single year. Utah Utes, perennially a West Coast power, honestly, and the conference that they're going to, I think they're going to dominate. And then obviously Washington is not going to be, I don't think, the 11th ranked team. I think there's going to be too much turnover there. I could see them creeping in the top, staying in the top 25 this year. I just don't know that I see them being in the top 15. What do you think about those?
Of those, surprisingly, like looking at it, with having it in front of me, I think Oklahoma is the better team out of this group of 5. I really like what they bring back. I like David Stone, who they got as a recruit, defensive tackle, 5-star, really big guy. I like what he's going to be able to provide in the middle. And I'm anxious to see what Jackson Arnold does. He really impressed me, and I think he's going to have an outstanding year this year and next year, and be a 3-and-out kind of guy.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma is in pretty good shape. They're doing a lot better at building on the lines of scrimmage and on that defense, and that's what they were missing this past year, dude. It was way too easy to run on that football team. It was pretty rough, pretty tough to watch it at times. Gave up over 200 yards rushing in multiple games. Number 16, the Florida State Seminoles. 17, Tennessee Vols. Number 18, Oklahoma State. Number 19, the Clemson Tigers, and number 20, the NC State Wolf Pack. I don't know much about NC State, so I'm not going to comment too much on that one. But Clemson Tigers at number 19, they better be number 19. Playing in that conference, you better be at least 19. And honestly, I think that's kind of underwhelming for the Clemson fans, who I feel like that's a little bit of a fall from grace. Oklahoma State at 18, I could totally see that. I mean, just give that guy, give Gundy, 105 guys or whatever it is, and he's gonna put together a football team. Tennessee Vols, we're gonna see, dude. We're gonna see about this quarterback. I mean, Mr. I am about to leave you. I don't know how to say his name. Nico Iamaleava. I don't know, something like that. Look, this guy's is gonna be good, I think, but right now he's bones and skin. He's got to gain some weight, dude. This guy, I know he's really tall, but he's really thin. I can tell that he wants to be able to run the football. He's going to have to learn how to get out of bounds, get down. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty rough year next year, I think. What do you think about this group?
Most intriguing to me is Tennessee. I think that I believe it's Iamaleava, but if he's able to produce and
That's what I said. I'm about to leave you.
Yeah. I am a leave is what it looks like. I'm gonna leave you, Tennessee. I'm gonna leave you in the dust. I'm gonna go get this bag. But no, Tennessee paid him enough to keep him. So I think that he's going to be one of the more interesting players in the SEC as a whole. You're going to hear a lot of talk about this guy preseason. And can Heupel put together a season with him like he did in his first year with Tennessee? Kind of get back into that mold, because with Joe Milton, I think that things were underwhelming last year offensively. They actually had a pretty decent defense, but offensively, I think they definitely were an underwhelming unit. outside of that, Florida State at 16. I like what Florida State has coming in. I think they do lose a lot, but I like DJU coming in as like his 7th year in college, coming back to the ACC. Maybe, I guess we'll see what Florida State decides to do there, or what they're able to do. Obviously, we know what they want to do in getting out of the ACC, but they get linebacker, former 5-star Marvin Jones Jr. from Georgia. He plays that outside linebacker. He is a legacy player for Florida State, and also a tight end, 5-star tight end Landon Thomas out of Georgia. Another big target for DJU to throw to, and another big tight end target for Florida State, who sees Jaheim Bell leave the program, and now he's got a position with his name on it at tight end.
I think Florida State is a little bit overrated in this list, but we're going to see. I feel like we've seen what we've seen out of DJU. I don't know how much more. I mean, I'm not saying he can't get any better, but I mean, come on, we've seen this guy for years.
Well,
we
I
know
don't
what he's
know.
about. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's just not great.
I still don't think that. I'm not a big Jordan Travis fan. I'll be honest with you. I don't know that there's that much of a difference between him and DJU personally. I think he'll get you a few deep balls. If they get the run game going, he'll beat you over the top on a few plays. If you let him take the shots downfield, which, we know that Jordan Travis took shots all year. So he's got a pretty deep ball sometimes, but it's inconsistent. Same with Jordan Travis. I don't feel like there's a whole lot there that's much different. DJU on the ground is kind of a big bulldozer, whereas Jordan Travis is more shifty. So I think you're getting a pretty similar athlete at quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm curious, where the wide receivers are coming from, because I mean, they're losing Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, losing Jaheim Bell. These, and on top of losing your quarterback Jordan Travis. So yeah, I mean, I have cause for concern for Florida State. Not to mention they're about to go through sanctions. So those are in effect for this year, and I'm interested to see how that affects their football team. One of their NIL partners is now banned from doing any future business with players. So you got one arm tied behind your back. We'll see what Mike Norvell can do there with the Florida State Noles. And then let's go through these last ones. Kansas State at 21, Louisville 22, Kansas Jayhawks at 23, SMU Mustangs at 24, and the Iowa Hawkeyes at 25. I really like the SMU being included here. This is a team that's on the rise. Iowa, we got to see them be able to score some points. I mean, they averaged 15.4 points per game this past year. I mean, that is unbelievably bad, ranked 132nd. So we're going to see what that new offense looks like with the new offensive coordinator. But I don't know about having them in the top 25. They always have a good defense, and that's probably why they're ranked there. I think the Kansas Jayhawks, are a little underrated on this list. I think the Kansas Jayhawks, they quietly went 9-5 last year. Okay. I think that the quarterback is back. He's been on multiple radio shows in Kansas and things like that, and talked about the back and how it was very unpredictable last year with his injury. And we saw that. Bettors were pissed off last year betting on Kansas, because every time right before the game started, it seemed like you got a different quarterback than what you thought was playing. Apparently he's healthy, and he said you just don't realize how blessed you are when you are healthy until you're unhealthy for a long period of time. He said, but I'm 100% back and I'm ready to go. That gives me some confidence with this Kansas team. And Leipold ended up staying, right? He didn't end up leaving anywhere. So that was a big deal for Kansas to be able to hold on to Lance Leipold, right? What do you think about that end of that list there, 21 through 25?
I love it. I'm with you. First of all, with Iowa, I think you kind of have to include them just because of how good they've been on defense. But with the Big Ten changing next year, I'm sure that they have a much tougher schedule, and you'll see them out of the top 25.
And no divisions anymore either.
Right. Much tougher schedule based off of that. So they probably won't be holding that position very long if they end up in the preseason AP top 25. The SMU Mustangs, I love them in the top 25. I like them in the ACC this year. I think that they're going to give those teams fits in the ACC this year. They're absolutely going to be, I don't want to say a powerhouse, but for ACC standards, yeah, they're going to be really good. 23, 24, and 25, or excuse me, 21, 22, and 23. Kansas State, Louisville, and Kansas in that order. I love all three of these teams this year based on what's coming in, what's going out. I love them so much that I would actually put them all the way ahead of, I would say maybe below Florida State for me, but ahead of Tennessee at 17, 18, and 19 is where I would have them. I think that they're better than NC State. I think they're better than Clemson. I think they're better than Oklahoma State and Tennessee. All three of those teams, to me, I'm really high on for this upcoming year.
Nice. Yeah, we're going to get a better look at all these teams come springtime. That's whenever we get a ton of our intel and we get to do our summer school lessons. Ain't that right?
That's right.
I can't wait for those. That's my favorite time of year, and we hope that you'll subscribe to the channel because that's going to happen before you know it. We got spring games coming up and spring practices coming up in April, so we're going to know more about these teams after that, and after those spring games, and then we're going to have another transfer portal open up. So make sure you're subscribed to the 1st&LONG College Football Show. That way, whenever we got content being loaded up, that you're going to know about it and know where to go to get all of your college football news. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. We do appreciate you, the people that have trickled in and out throughout the show. And again, we hope that you'll hit that thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button so you can follow 1st&LONG. And we will bring you the college football news as we get it. Everybody have a wonderful night, and we will see you next week unless we have an emergency pod. You never know. Thanks again. Signing out for Marcus and Mason and the 1st&LONG College Football Show. Have a good night.
Y'all have a good night. Thanks.